school. He didn't like reading. The only thing he liked was Greek mythology. We found out that he's ADHD and he's dyslexic, which is one of the reasons that he wasn't real big on reading. It was hard for him. But since he did like the myths, I started telling him stories at home because I taught them for many years. Finally, I ran out, though, and he said, "Dad, tell me another one tonight." I said, "Well, I'm sorry, there aren't any more." He said, "Well, then make up one." And I thought about it for a second, and off the top of my head, I came up with this kid, Percy Jackson. I made up this story about his quest across the United States. I told it to my son in about 3 nights, and he said, "Dad, that was good. Write it down." I said, "No, I don't have time." He said, "No, really, write it down." So I did. I read it to him. I read it to some of my students. They liked it. I sent it off to the publisher, and the next thing I know, lo and behold, I have a contract to write this series, and it became The Lightning Thief. So it's and I can't believe how many people really took to the story. It was just a bedtime story for my son. That was the inspiration, but so many people have enjoyed it. I'm so gratified that you guys have liked the books. When I started Percy Jackson, I knew it was going to be 5 books. I wanted him to be 16 in the last book. And I wanted it to have like a good, strong ending. I didn't want to write Percy Jackson forever, like Percy Jackson 13, Percy Jackson 25, Percy Jackson 36, here comes the Minotaur, again. But at the same time, I knew there were a lot of stories that I couldn't fit in those 5 books. So I started thinking, okay, how could I write more about that world but kind of turn it around, turn things on their head? And then I started thinking, what if, I know the West Coast, I live in San Francisco, what if there was another camp, a secret camp, but it was the Roman version of Camp Half-Blood, and it was set on the West Coast? What if the 2 camps, Greek and Roman, didn't know about each other? And then what if suddenly they found out about each other? What would happen? I said, either that would be really great, or it would be really, really bad. And either way, I wanted to write about it. And that's where the idea for the Heroes of Olympus came from. And the Son of Neptune, our friend Percy, is back. But there's a catch. His memory is gone. He's dropped into this Roman camp. He doesn't know who he is or how he got there. And he's got to figure out how to survive and how to help his new friends at Camp Jupiter. And so I hope you guys like the story. At the same time I'm writing these books, I'm also writing these books about the Kane family. And thank you guys. I'm so glad you guys have enjoyed those 2. I really wanted to do both. I wanted to do Egypt and Greece and Rome, and I knew that you guys didn't like to wait. So I figured if I'm going to do that, I'm going to have to speed it up, do my best to do 2 books a year. So that's what I'm doing. I'm writing an Egyptian book and then a Greek and Roman book, and then back and forth and back and forth. So it usually takes me about a year to write each book. I've managed to speed it up to once every 6 months or so. And so far, so good. So the next book that comes out will be the 3rd Kane Chronicles book in May. And then the Son of Neptune sequel, the Mark of Athena, will come out. So it's amazing to be here, and that's how I came to write about mythology. I've always loved it. But my favorite part about these things is finding out what questions you guys have. Now, obviously, in a crowd this size, we can't get to everybody. But if you do have a question, raise your hand, and I'd love to hear from you guys.